Hi guys, I'm Jash Vora, a 22-year-old student from Mumbai and an aspiring restaurateur. In my journey towards opening my own food service outlet someday, hopefully not too far in the future, I am trying to create the space where I can talk to young and upcoming restaurateurs who have recently opened their own food service operations and pick their brains about how they went about establishing their brand. I hope a few other souls like me who hope to start a restaurant or cafe someday can learn a thing or two from this. Enjoy!
We have a short third episode coming your way from Alibaug today. I talked to Dhani Goregaonkar, the owner of the Paisley Experience, a farm to folk sustainable eating experience in Alibaug, which brings to you the local cuisine, which is called the Pachkalshi cuisine. Enjoy!
It took it took 2 months roughly.
Okay, so not that long too, right?
Not that long.
Okay,
And you can start before you get your FSSAI license.
yeah,
It will, yeah. So it's not that longer waiting period.
got it. So quite easy. Hi, Dani.
Hi Josh. So I am Dani, also known as Dhanashri Goregaonkar. I am also a student of pretty much it.
Could you please introduce yourself?
I am currently running a restaurant, a farm to fork venture in the village of Alibaug. And yeah, I think so. I'll start from the last question. Paisley actually is an Indian print. You see a lot of it in textiles. It resembles a raw mango, and we basically named it after that because raw mango is a very integral part of our cuisine.
Right.
And the cuisine we serve is actually the cuisine I grew up on. It is called the Pachkashi cuisine. It is the cuisine of some of the original inhabitants of Bombay and Delhi. Like the
Okay.
people who first settled in these areas, this is the cuisine of those people. And when we started Paisley, we started out as a delivery kitchen. And eventually, once we got the space, once we grew with time, we made it a whole holistic experience, which involves dining and we grow our own vegetables. It's more than just a restaurant. People
Right.
get to see where the food is coming from. People get to learn about the cuisine when they eat it.
Right. So what are some of the main items on the menu you would say? Like some like I know it's seasonal, right? But what are some of the perennial items or what are the special seasonal items?
So when we talk seasonal, we go with a lot of basically whatever is fresh. That
Right.
is the main, and the way we go about putting these dishes on the menu is something I really enjoy. We do a lot of research. We actually read a lot of old recipe books, talk to characteristic of all of our dishes. We use the freshest ingredients possible. We use whatever's growing locally, and our menu is actually it has a few dishes that you won't see anywhere else on any other menu. For
Okay.
example, we have our pineapple amti, which is a very unique pineapple curry. People
Right.
find it weird having a fruit. I mean, people get
Right.
angry
It's
about
quite
having
unintuitive.
pineapple on pizza, but having
Yeah.
pineapple in a curry puts people off at times. But when they try it, it's something different, and it's
Right.
a whole different flavor profile for some people.
Right.
And we have a lot of different dishes which are not usually found in the mainstream menus.
Right.
Talk to people who've been cooking these for years and develop them to make them more palatable for
Right.
everybody.
So
Okay.
what how did Paisley come about? Could you please tell us about that?
I think Paisley came about after I decided, like after I finished my training, I realized that working in a big organization is not really for me. It really limits a person's creativity. I mean,
Right.
everybody who's worked in a hotel knows that when you work in a hotel, at least at an entry level, or in the beginning, that your work is not really a reflection of you or your
Right, right,
creative
right,
skills.
right. I completely get that. It's like
Yeah, you're
you
just
just
following SOPs.
right, exactly. You're just being told what to do and you do it like a robot.
Yeah, so I didn't want to be just another cog in the machine, right?
Right,
So that's when I decided I wanted to start something of my own.
right,
And to me, in Alibag, when we realized it's an untapped market, at that point of time before the pandemic, the food scene in Bombay was very saturated.
Correct.
Every other corner there was a new place coming up, and there's a lot of people doing Western food, Southeast Asian food, and they're doing a brilliant job at it.
Right.
And as much as I enjoy cooking these dishes, a part of me knew that this is not for me. It's not my true calling. So
Okay.
I decided to look into my own cuisine, and I realized that wow, there's a lot of dishes that people don't know about at all.
Right.
Started,
So, the main team is you and your mom, right?
yes, I run Paisley with my mother.
Right. So, how did you both make the major decisions regarding the brand? Like choosing to make it a farm to fork operation, choosing the aesthetics over there, the cuisine and the team was already decided because it's the two of you and you all wanted to make this cuisine, right? But the other major decisions to be made, what was the process followed for those decisions, or what were those decisions basically?
So, in terms of aesthetics and marketing and all of that, I actually had to teach myself how to go about
Okay.
creating a brand and promoting it.
Right.
Because a lot of these hospitality courses, including the ones that we did, do
Right.
not focus on the selling part of the food. They just go on the preparing
Correct.
the
Correct.
food side of it and the back end functions. Nobody is telling you how to actually sell your food.
Right.
So, for anybody who's actually starting out, I would highly recommend you do some online courses on marketing, figure out how to make creatives. I
Okay.
mean, there are people who can do it for you, but if you're starting out as a small business, it's always better to know
How to do it
how
on
to
one?
do
Yeah,
these
of
things on
course.
your own. And that way, you can create a brand that actually is a reflection of you.
Right.
There's a little bit of yourself in the brand. So if you look at our social media at the very beginning, and if you look at it now, it has evolved over time because even I'm
Right.
learning
Right.
how to make these things, how I want to sell my brand, how I want to present it.
Correct.
And when it came to staffing, that was another major decision.
Okay.
We decided to go with local staff
Right.
who aren't formally trained.
Okay. So then how did you go about training them in the type of food and more so in the disciplinary part of it where how a kitchen is supposed to run, right?
Yes. So basically, these people were very talented when it came to cooking because these we have a kitchen staff that is all women.
Okay.
So cooking is something they do every day.
Right.
That is not something we had to actually teach them. We just had to teach them a few recipes here and there that this is different from how you make it. This is how
Right.
we want to set. We just had to set up certain SOPs in terms of cleanliness, organization, and
Right.
how food should go out.
Right. The presentation part of
So,
it.
yes. So basically, they cook like they would at home with the same techniques. We have with the same tools. We have a chula also. You
Okay.
know, everything in the rural setting, we prepare it like they do it.
So it's quite indigenous.
Yeah, it's just that certain were set in terms of cleanliness and organization, like you would in a professionally run
Right, right.
kitchen.
So, who is the executive chef over there? Like, who runs the kitchen on a daily basis? Is it one of y'all or is it some of the locals?
Initially, my mom and I were there at all times.
Okay.
Like every order that went out,
Scrutinizing
we were
it.
watching, we
Yeah.
were scrutinizing, we were cooking some orders on our own. Even
Right.
now, we still cook now and then, but now we have a staff that can manage orders on their own.
Right. So
We
you
just
you
have
all
to.
can focus on some other important things with this marketing and stuff.
So I feel like now there's no time for people to try new dishes like right now. People have become more
Right.
experimental with the food they eat, and
Right.
especially when they're traveling. That is one major advantage I have. That my customers are people who are holidaying or traveling,
Correct.
and when you're traveling, you are always open to new experiences.
Right.
So people who come to my restaurant are always open to trying something different, trying something local, trying a
Right.
different cuisine. The people don't want to go to Alibaug and eat the the same thing that they're eating in Bombay.
Right,
So that is a big plus for me in terms of people being open to different cuisine.
right. And on your
And
views, how can it be made even more popular in like mainstream areas?
in mainstream areas, I feel like there's so much competition. There's not much you and I can really do to make food popular. If your
Right,
food is good, I think it will sell anyhow.
right,
I mean, there's Ashok Vada Pav is not going out and telling people to eat his food. His
right, correct.
product is good, it will sell.
Right. Got it.
And I think that one rule is
Above all
permanent when it comes to
others.
food.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's only so much marketing can do.
correct. So, what are your views on the rise and the future of such experiential dining outlets, which especially with farm to fork concepts, which promote sustainability? Because these are not usually found in your mainstream dining areas, right? You have to travel
Correct.
for it, or you have to probably, if not travel, you have to spend more for it because you are traveling that far, and also there is the problem of seasonality with it, right? So, what are
Yes.
your views on the rise of such experiential dining places? Is it
I
like,
think
is it
people
in a nascent
becoming more
stage
aware.
or is it picking up quite fast now?
I think it's still starting out. It's still very small, but it has a lot of potential with people becoming more aware about sustainability
Right,
and the environment. People want to know where their food is coming from. People are going vegan, people are eating organic, people know what these things mean these days.
correct,
And they want to make a conscious effort to know the source of their food, know where it's coming from. And people are willing to travel for food and for the whole experience.
right. People just
Especially
want to break
now,
away from the normal, right?
yes. Earlier, it was difficult for us in monsoon because all the ferries would shut down
Right,
to Alibaug. And the roads would actually be very bad if you wanted to drive down. But now, with the Ropax ferry starting, it has made our life much better. People are still traveling up and down in comfort.
right.
And the seasonality factor is not affecting us as much as it used to. Earlier,
Okay,
monsoon would be like a total shutdown in Alibaug.
right.
And especially now, with the whole pandemic, people are buying houses there. People are vacationing. It's the closest, most convenient place to go to.
Right.
So that is also a big factor that has contributed to the seasonality of our outlet.
Great. So, what have been your major milestones and what have been your major challenges till now?
So milestone, it's not anything big, but one of my friends had asked on a WhatsApp group. He was coming to Alibaug. He asked on a
Right,
WhatsApp group, what are some of the good places to try? What is
right.
what should we try when we go there? And majority of the people on that group said Paisley experience.
Well,
And
that's great to hear.
yeah, and that was a milestone for me because I realized that people were actually talking about my food. My food was speaking for itself, and people basically knew that if you're going to Alibaug, you should eat Paisley experience. You should go eat at Paisley experience, and I
Right.
think that was one of my biggest milestones.
And what about the challenges of getting guests to travel to come this far, getting the word out with the marketing and the promotions, and also about creating new and different menus every time there's a change in seasons, depending on the fresh ingredients? Because I feel that would also be quite a big challenge, right? Because as soon as something goes out, you have to bring a new star dish in.
Pretty much. So when it comes to people traveling, people have started traveling, doing day trips much
Okay,
more frequently because of the Roro.
right,
And people are moving to Alibaug with this whole work from home thing
right,
happening. So that has been an advantage for us. And when it came to marketing, we constantly putting out posts about our whole experience, about our farming, about the food we make,
right.
about everything we do on Instagram. And I have had a lot of people contacting me saying that they're willing to plan a weekend trip to Alibaug just to eat our food.
Right.
So if you create a certain, if you create an attractive front for people to see, people will be willing to travel for your food.
Right.
It's not just the food you're selling, it's the whole experience. When you're telling people to come eat your food, you're telling them to travel. You're
Correct.
telling them that there is so much to do and see in Alibaug. You should make a trip. And
Correct.
while you're there, you should eat our food. And when it comes to seasonal menus, it's really fun for me actually
Right.
because I get to go through this whole process of doing research as to what is seasonal, what do the locals eat, what is
Right.
available, and I get to dig up old recipes. I ask a lot of people around, and it's a learning experience for me every time I decide to make a new menu.
So, coming to the type of cuisine that you are selling, it's quite regional. So, Alibaug is
Yes.
quite a popular tourist destination too now. So, how do you all cope with going against restaurants which are selling burgers and fries and pizzas? Like, is there a big competition in that? Do they take up a major market share? And what has been your experience with that?
So I don't really see it as competition because there's people who want to eat pizza and burgers, and there's people doing a brilliant job at it, even in Alibag. There's a lot of good quality pizzas and pastas and all of that stuff available. But at the same time, there's people who want to go to a certain place and eat the cuisine of that
That
certain
place, yeah.
place. And there's always going to be people who are more adventurous than others and people who prefer a more familiar, safe option.
Right. So, in your opinion,
So
you
that,
try not to go chasing after those and try consolidating these people, is it?
yes,
Okay.
exactly. So there's always they are always going to have their customer base, and I'm going to have my customer base.
Right.
So it's not really competing.
Right. Right. Right.
They're good
Got
at
it.
what they do, and I feel we are good at what we do.
Right. So, now coming to the legal aspects and the permission aspects of opening the food service operation, what was your experience like while getting all the permissions and the legalities done while opening the restaurant?
So I feel like as a first time, take these matters into their own hands. There's people who will do it for you. There are agencies who will do it for you,
Okay.
but it's always best to at least try doing it on your own first
Right.
because that way you know what you've signed on, what your legal obligations are, what
Correct.
permits you need, and in that process you make a lot of contact. So for
Okay.
me, more than the legal permits, more than the FSSAI and all of that, we had to build a better rapport with the Gram Panchayat.
Okay.
And it's always advantageous to have a good rapport with your local authorities,
Right.
especially if you're starting out a small business. You need their support.
So, approximately how much time did it take you to get all of the legal aspects in place before you started operating? Since the time you started the process,
Yes.
right? So now, if you could give me a checklist of what are the things that one person should know before they go about starting a food service operation.
According to me, the first and foremost thing is the idea. You need to know what kind of food you want to sell. More importantly, you need to believe in this idea that you have. You need to be passionate about it. If you
Right,
just think of it as a business, if you just think of it as something commercial, and you don't put it, you won't end up putting as much love and effort
right,
as it takes. So I think that is very important. Just having an idea you believe in,
right,
researching the kind of food you want to sell, researching the kind of researching the kind of market you are trying to appeal to. So first and foremost, it would be gathering information, having a solid idea of what you want to do with your
right.
business. Second of all is a very practical thing, that's your budget. You need to know where your funds are coming from at least for the next 6 to 7 months of your business.
Okay,
Your business is not going to start making money instantly.
right,
You need to be able to sustain the first at least 6 months. You need to
Okay.
have that much. You need to prepare for that. You need to figure out all of your costs. You need to figure out what kind of raw material you'll be using, where your raw material is coming from, and budget for all of that. And third would be planning.
Okay.
You need to plan your menu. You need to plan who you're employing, how the organization is going to be structured. You need to
Right.
plan your marketing. Basically, a lot of planning. I suggest you actually you need to look up how to make a business plan and actually make one as if you're presenting it to some investors.
Got it.
Even if you're not presenting it to anybody, and if your business makes sense on that, if it makes sense to you, then you
Right.
should go ahead with it.
Right.
Fourth would be location. Once you figure out your location, you need to figure out basic things like your electricity, your water, especially if you're running a business in a rural area like Alibaug. You need to figure out these small things which one would usually take for granted in an urban area.
Right.
And if you're running a restaurant, not just a delivery kitchen, you need to figure out what you can do with that location,
Correct.
the potential it has to be turned into an FSO.
Right.
Fifth, I would say it would be your brand. Creating a brand requires planning.
Correct.
You need to figure out what kind of image you want your brand to have, whom do you want to appeal to, your market segment, and how you're going to go about marketing it, how you're going to sell your product.
Right.
And I think the last step would be your trials and training your staff. And once you are done with all of this, once you're really confident, only then you can start. Because if
Right.
you are not confident with your product, if you don't have a product that you think is perfect, if you don't believe in your product 100%, nobody is going to believe it.
Right.
You really need to believe in your product if you want to sell it. And I think that would be my checklist personally.
That was quite a comprehensive checklist. Thanks a lot for that. Now, coming to one of the points that you pointed out in this checklist, the budgeting, right?
Yes,
So,
yes.
how did you personally go about the budgeting? Percentage wise, if you could say what were the major contributing factors in your monthly budget, and what are the surprising, or what are the significant contributors towards your budget which were quite inintuitive?
Okay, so in my personal experience, always have your fixed costs figured out. These will be your salaries and rent and all of that.
Right.
And for me, salaries have always been the biggest contributor of my budget. I'd say
Okay.
about almost 60 to 70% would be salaries.
Okay.
And these need to be in place because your organization can't run without your
Without the
employees, and your
people.
employees won't
Right.
work without the salaries.
Right.
And then you have your rent and the other fixed costs.
Right.
One thing that you need to budget for, especially if you're cooking seasonal, especially if your restaurant is in a seasonal location,
Right.
is the seasonal produce. So for me, a lot of my menu comprises of seafood,
Okay.
and seafood is a very seasonal ingredient.
Right. Right.
Surmai will be say 400 rupees in winter, and by monsoon the same fish will cost you 1000 rupees a kilo. You need to budget for these things, or your costs are going to go your costs need to change accordingly.
Right. Got it.
And another thing is, when with seasonal produce, you need to keep maintain your inventory also with
Right.
proportion to these fluctuations
Availability.
and
Yeah.
drop in prices.
Right.
And that is something people usually forget to budget for. I mean, even I would
Right.
forget to budget for these things initially. But these are things you pick up on the way and
Right.
budget for.
So, talking about the personnel and the manpower experiences, what has been your experience with hiring? Like you are hiring all the locals, but I'm sure, like how the whole industry faces, there might be a high turnover rate probably in your area, right? So, what has been your experience
Yes.
with that? How do you maintain, how do you manage your team in such a way that there is a low turnover rate of the employees? And what have been your problems and experiences with that?
So a major problem we had with hiring actually didn't take place like it usually does. It was more of a word of mouth process. There were no interviews or anything
Right,
like you have in a formal setting. It was
right,
more word of mouth, asking people around that do you know anybody who's interested in XYZ job?
correct,
And once we found these people, like I said, we trained them in the SOPs of hygiene and organization and all of that.
right,
But one major problem we face at times would be the work culture in rural areas. It
right,
is so much different to that in urban areas.
right.
And like
In what way?
in Bombay you'll have one person traveling from Virar to Nariman Point for his job because he wants to work,
Correct,
right? But over there in Alibaug, it would be a lot to ask someone if you just ask them to travel from the next village, which is 2 kilometers away to their place of work.
okay,
People are self-sufficient over there. People are farming. They don't really need to work.
right, got it,
It's work is just something they do to keep themselves occupied.
right,
So the same work culture is not there. And
right,
it's something we had to inculcate in our staff that we are actually running a professional organization here. There are certain things we need. There's certain attendance. There's certain working hours that need to be followed.
correct. So, how big is your
And
team right now? The kitchen staff and the outdoor staff?
right now we have a kitchen staff of 3 women
Okay,
and one manager.
right. And
So it's
does
a
your
staff of
staffing
4.
also change seasonally, or is it approximately this much only? Or if there is a high tourist season, do you employ more people?
Yes, when during winter, when we have more people coming in, we hire a few people on a part-time basis to help out.
Okay, okay, got it.
So even staff is seasonal.
Right. A lot of the things are seasonal.
Yes.
Right. So, one of the last few questions, as an entrepreneur, what do you net yet not know? What do you feel are the shortcomings that you have as a business owner, or things that you would like to improve by yourself?
So as a entrepreneur, there's a lot I don't know yet. I feel like every time we have a small issue or like a complaint coming in or a
Right,
problem with the staff, I'm learning something new every day. And
right,
when you're an entrepreneur, you are running every department of your
correct,
organization. You are the HR department, you are the finance department, you are the kitchen department. Everything is under you, right?
correct,
And I mean, nobody trained us to work in each and every one of these departments.
right,
So every function you do, it's like you're learning a particular skill. So there is a lot I don't know yet for me to put into one answer.
no problem. So, you have various channels of sales, right? You have the people coming into dine in with advanced bookings, and you also have deliveries going out in
Correct.
your nearby areas. So, what is the sales mix like between these, and how do you manage this difference between these two?
So during the season, I mean, COVID has changed a lot of things for us.
Right?
So right now we are just doing deliveries and takeaways.
Okay.
But during the season, when dine-ins were allowed, we actually had 70% of people coming into dine, and the other 30% of our revenue was coming from deliveries and takeaways.
Right. And this
So
delivery and
now that
takeaways was
dynamic has,
also tourist based, or was it also a bit local based?
by locals, we are talking about bungalow owners in Alibaug, not
Right.
local.
Right,
These
right,
are
right.
people from Bombay who have bought land in Alibaug. So it's a mix of the two. There's some people coming in and renting a villa for a weekend, they will order. Then there's people who've been living in Alibaug for years, they will also order.
Right.
It's a it's a fairly 50-50 mix of tourists and locals. But during season, during December, Jan, during winter months, it is more of the tourists.
Right. So one of the last questions: what does the future hold for Paisley? What is the vision 2 5 years down the line? What are the expansion plans? I see you've also done like pop-ups for different cuisines. What is the future plans with those?
We have a lot of requests of people asking for Western food, or people just telling me that, do you have XYZ food? I'm really craving it.
Okay.
So, and honestly, during the lockdown, I was in Alibaug, and there's not much to do in Alibaug,
Right.
especially in lockdown, right? You can't step out. So
Right.
I thought, let's cook something that let's make something that I personally enjoy cooking.
Correct.
So I came up with the pop up, and they're actually planning more in the future because it was this big success.
Nice. Is it going
And
to come to Mumbai finally?
maybe we did a pop up in Bombay last year also.
Right.
Yeah. So when we talk about the future for PhD, I would say my first biggest goal would be autonomy,
Okay.
because right now every order goes through me, and to some extent I am looking over each and every order that goes out.
Okay.
What I would like is for it to be a independent organization that runs on its own,
Okay.
facilitated by me. And of course, there's smaller goals like a growth in terms of covers, in terms of capacity, in terms of the number of people we can host at a time.
Right.
And talking long run, we are looking at starting a more holistic, all rounded experience where people can come stay at the place,
Okay.
like a B&B with
Right.
an organic farm that sustains not only just our kitchen, but we can also sell.
Okay. That sounds really interesting.
And this is 2 to 5 years down the line, and even beyond that, I I want to start multiple locations, and in those
Okay.
locations, we don't serve the same food as we do over here, but
Okay.
we serve the local food of that particular region or area.
Right. Got it.
Set up in rural areas and generate employment there, make their economy flourish, and serve the cuisine of that particular area.
Right.
So those are my long-term goals for people.
And I wish you the best of luck for that.
Thank you so much.
So we come to the end of the podcast by this point. If you would like to ask the viewers to come to Paisley anytime in the future, you can do that right here.
I would absolutely love to see all of your listeners visit,
So are you
and
open for dining right now?
not right now because I'm actually waiting for my staff to get vaccinated.
Okay. So
So
what is the
once
plan?
we
When
do
does it
that,
start?
maybe in
Okay.
a month, we shall be open for dine-ins again.
Okay. And where exactly in Alibag is your place?
We're in the small village called Dhokaude near Mandwa, 5 minutes from Mandwa.
Okay. Great.
That brings us to the end of the third episode of my podcast. Hope this is entertaining or informative to whoever has stayed on till now. Adios, tata, goodbye.